All right, guys, please, for me, like, comment, subscribe on this video. I'm a new channel, right? We all know the stories, Dragons on Fraudwatch, and so today we're going to try to break it down to see exactly what he's made out of. All right, everybody, welcome back to another One Piece discussion video. Today we're talking about Dragon. We all know Dragon. We've all seen the One Piece agenda memes. We know what it's about. We've basically seen him be put on literal fraud watch. Basically for the last, probably, I'd say, it probably peaked at Egghead, and my favorite One Piece agenda meme is when Ginny was kidnapped. A lot of fans were like, hey, Dragon, why don't you save her? Go in there and get her, right? You can do it. You're Garp's son. You're Luffy's dad. You got power, right? And then the whole meme of Kuma essentially just walking up to Dragon, being like, hey, Dragon, we need to save Ginny. And Dragon, something is Chire, basically drunk, essentially like, ugh, Kuma? She's a married woman. You gotta respect her. I thought you were a religious man. You work at a church. Respect the sanctity of marriage. And for me, that just got me dying. And I was like, yeah, that's an ethical meme, and it's hilarious because this man has essentially done nothing but look east, literally, and just absolutely do nothing this entire story arc. Okay, yeah, he saved Sabo. Yeah, he probably saved Luffy. But, you know, tangent aside, today's video, what I want to talk about is what are the theories associated with his devil fruit, all right? What powers does he have, all right? So I've narrowed down to 3 possibilities, all right? And these are not even original, probably the ones most people have thought of at this point. What are the 3 devil fruits that would fit Dragon and his personality? Okay, first one would be a Logia, Paramecia, and a mythical Zoan, all right? So let's just roll through the ones we know we can think of before the end of this video, all right? So the first one, all right, obviously the Kaze no Mi, the Gus fruit or Wind fruit, making Dragon a wind human, all right? This is probably the first fan theory people had about his devil fruit all the way back in Lockdown, when you see him and a bolt of lightning strikes and saves Luffy, who was going to get his head chopped off by Buggy, and then suddenly he stops Smoker from hurting Luffy, and then a huge gust of wind just blows through all of Logtown, and it sends Luffy and his crew on their way so they can get to the Grand Line and they can continue their pirate journey. So that was the first thought people had. Oh, Dragon has the wind Logia, because in fiction, particularly in shonen battle manga, there is a trope that we all know. It is the wind Logia. It is the wind power, all right? You know, you think of obviously characters like, say, Yuno from Black Clover, Naruto, had wind style. Different characters use it in different ways, and so this kind of gives us a piece the way we can think of, okay, how would this power be used in an actual story? Well, let's just imagine this, all right? You are made of wind. You're a Logia, so you have the typical, you know, elemental shifting. Attacks just pass right through you. Doesn't work. You're basically able to avoid any attacks that involve Haki without Haki, all right? Easy. So what if somebody had a wind-based Logia? Well, there's a few ways they would use this power. The first power I would think that would come with this fruit is the ability to fly. Since you're wind itself, you're literally air, you can basically ride air currents, all right? You can essentially pick yourself up and just ride the wind, all right, and control where you want to go, all right? You could just go... You can go anywhere you want. You could go above the Grand Line, over the Red Line. You could go through to the North, South, and West Blue, cross the combat without any issue. But actually, you know, you might not be able to ride the combat. You couldn't ride the combat because there is no wind in that direction. So there might be a weakness there. It has to be wind, right? Obviously, if you're inside the vacuum of space, you can't control wind. Well, actually, no. You might be able to because your body's made out of wind. Because if your body's made out of wind, then okay, you may or may not be able to cross the combat with the wind Logia. Okay, you may or may not be able to. But let's break this down further. Okay, you've got the second power up, all right? Then you have the power associated with, let's say you've got the power to use, like, for example, another example would be in Avatar: Last Airbender, all right? Airbenders can basically control the air around them, basically use it to lift things, push things away. You see them, obviously, you spout the air spout where they can just move and across themselves, across anywhere. Another way I could see this power being used is, for example, in, say, we're crossing into the realm of, say, My Hero Academia. When Deku uses his All One For All, he can flick and create air cannons. So if somebody who does have the wind Logia, they can increase the strength of their force of their punches. And say you are Dragon and you are Garp's son and you are jacked. You've got Conqueror's Haki out the ass. You just lean back, rear back your head, and you just blast it. And so suddenly you can just literally fire off air cannons that just basically level shit. You can just blow up anything that gets in your way, all right? So if you are controlling the wind, right? Another way this power could be used is you have the ability to basically just increase your speed. if you can just basically compress the wind between you and other people, and you can just blast off in straight shots, or you can push other people. Other ways this power could be used is just essentially being able to push things in and out and just blast away. All right. This power of this fruit sounds really useful to have. All right. It's an effective fruit in the right hands. So why wouldn't it be? Obviously, this fruit, especially this fruit in the high seas, could be very valuable. Imagine you're out at sea, right? Or in this case, you are in the calm belt. There is no wind, right? That's why it's called the calm belt. Well, if you're a dragon, you can basically turn your wind in your body and push the sails to get away. You wouldn't need a paddle ship or the snakes pulling your ship like the Kuja pirates do in Amazon Lily. You wouldn't need that. So you have that power going for you. Then you have the power most associated with, say, for example, wind users, and this is probably one I can think of, is slashing and cutting. All right, you can create blades of wind that shred anything. All right, obviously, for example, this is probably not a best example, but Sukuna and JJK, his technique Shrine, basically are invisible wind slashes that he points to stuff or he touches, and he can basically shred to pieces. All right, he can shred apart rock, steel, literal skyscrapers get torn apart. You can basically slash apart anything. You see this used in, say, Black Clover with Yuno and his ability to create wind spells, where he just basically shreds apart anything. You see, for example, another way would be Naruto, when he uses his wind style in his Rasengan. It's basically a slashing and piercing attack that rips apart anything. That's incredibly effective. We see this with other characters, like, say, Tamari. With her giant wind fan, she basically creates a cyclone that shreds apart anything. All right, so yeah, if you have a wind Logia, you are basically able to fly. You can create a gust of pressure that basically, when your punches, kicks, or anything, that creates enough force to basically level almost anything. You can basically control the wind, where you can push your sail through the calm belt. Maybe, maybe not. We don't know how that power would work. Then you've got the ability to create wind slashes that basically cut apart anything that you deem necessary. All right, you can basically cut apart ships. You can splinter them. You could be a menace on the high seas. All right, and this is probably a lesser power that comes with the power to control the wind. You could push storm clouds around. This gets into some other sources of fiction, but one trope I see is people using the wind to control the weather, and by basically moving storm clouds in certain directions, this would give someone the effective ability to manipulate the weather and basically just create a hurricane or a tornado, and outside of using the normal wind powers to create a tornado and create a typhoon. And you can basically just like naturally manipulate the weather with the power of the wind, and you can just basically get away with anything you want, right? And obviously this kind of power needs a lot of times experience, hard work, training. Obviously, maybe the ability to control the wind would be the awaken power. One way you could look at it is somebody who did awaken their fruit could, for example, control the wind, and they could move clouds around, so they can manipulate the weather. That's one awakened power that comes with it. But yeah, that's the first one, the wind Logia. And obviously you'd have your typical defenses, the ability to fly, create tornadoes on land with just by moving your hand around. Again, pretty powerful fruit, all right? And it wouldn't be the highest clear of Logia powers. Obviously, somebody like Akainu's magma fruit, Teach's dark fruit, even Kizaru's Pika Nomi, or Aokiji's Ice fruit would probably be just like a step higher above it in terms of destructive power. But it'd be right up there with things, for example, say the flame fruit, because if, say, for example, and this is another reference to Avatar, when Zahir, we all know Zahir, great guy, anarchist, love to use airbending to asphyxiate people. If somebody has the wind Logia, they are basically able to essentially control the weather, control the air in your body, and basically suck out all the air and literally just be like, choke the hell out of you while air is leaving your body. You're just basically being asphyxiated on sight. So if somebody with the wind Logia got their powers, they could just basically twist it into a tornado and suck the air out of you and basically choke you out. Or, and this is another way I could think of it, of them fighting a Delphi user, they could create a literal tunnel or a vortex that sucks out all the air, oxygen. So this means fire-based attacks like someone's Sabo's flames or even Akainu's magma. They can't ignite because there's no oxygen, because the wind tunnel is sucking all the air out of it. So this pretty much would give them a massive boost in fighting other Delphi users. Now, let's talk about weaknesses. Okay, I think a weakness for this fruit probably would be someone, say, for example, Aokiji's Ice fruit, his Hinomi. Basically, the way it works, and I'm no meteorologist, no science expert, when the air becomes colder, it becomes much harder for people to take in and out. So if, for example, they are fighting someone who does able to decrease temperature, like Aokiji or Monet to a lesser extent, or I guess in case Loki's case, Ragnir, they can basically make it harder for your wind to get around. So that means it's slowing it down. All right. That's probably what all the things I can think of right now for what a wind Logia could do. Tornadoes, flight, potentially weather manipulation, wind slashes, vortexes that suck out all the oxygen, all the powers that come with that. All right. And so then the second possibility for Dragon's Dale fruit, the second one, it has to be the power associated with the storm fruit. All right. In Japanese, that would be the Arashi no Mi storm fruit. Again, this fruit, if it does exist, would probably be one of the more destructive ones. Certainly, in my opinion, the second strongest of the Paramecia class. This would basically be the devil fruit that only surpassed in terms of pure destructive capabilities by the Guruguru no Mi, okay? We all know the Guruguru no Mi. Sengoku said it's got the power to destroy the world, and if you just kept blasting with the earthquakes, you could not only level cities, but entire continents, and just create massive destruction, all right? If you control this storm, essentially, you can control any weather phenomena. You can basically do an upgraded version of what, say, Big Mom does with her soul powers, create thunder, like with a Zeus or Hera, create storm clouds that shoot lightning at you, but you don't need to rip out your own soul. You don't need to use storm clouds. No, you can just do that yourself. You could just be like Grand Lightning Strike and just hammer away lightning strikes, all right? Essentially, that's what the power of the Storm fruit would come. If you have the ability to have the Storm fruit, you can effectively, basically, you're a one-man army, essentially. You can fight, for example, you're out fighting a whole bunch of people, right? And you're surrounded. You basically can summon up a storm of rain, thunder, with lightning, actually. And then you could just use hail. And assuming you have some kind of like a storm-based ability, you can make it misty, where you can create mist illusions, where your opponent can't hit you. They can't hit you. Like, again, like this is another example. One of the theories that people had about, for example, well, this one a theory, but it was like said about Aizen Zanpakuto. It was a water mist Zanpakuto that uses mist to confuse enemies. In reality, it was perfect hypnosis. So this would be like that, using mist powers to basically create illusions where people would essentially be hurt fighting each other, or they wouldn't know. And so that's like one defensive application of it. Obviously, if you did have the power of a storm fruit, my headcanon is you could create and control storm clouds, and you could ride on one, like say Sun Wukong from Journey to the West, or Goku from Dragon Ball Flying Nimbus. If you know where that reference is, good for you. And you can basically just fly around and do whatever you really want with that power. Again, these are the powers that come with a storm-based ability for, right? And I probably lends to self all weather manipulation. Imagine what Nami can do, but on an upgraded scale, which, tangent, if Nami ever got her hands on a Devil Fruit, I would have revealed that, yes, she would have Eneru's Guruguru no Mi, the Lightning Logia, the Rumble Fruit, the Lightning Logia, and that effectively would make her a weather woman where she would be unbreakable, except only to Luffy. So, there you go. That's your headcanon. Go with it what you will. And so, when it comes to the powers of someone with a storm fruit, they control all weather phenomena. Okay, we talked about lightning. We talked about mist. All right, wind. You can control the wind. You can basically create hurricanes, essentially. Like, you can actually create hurricanes and, like, just devastate entire cities and islands, and you can just absolutely level them. Like I feel like this doesn't need to be explained, but when you have this kind of power, you can basically mow down almost anything that gets in your way. You're not able to just like be like, okay, well, here's this Navy fortress. Okay, I'm gonna summon a hurricane with massive typhoons and see what happens. And this basically would just absolutely demolish anything that gets in your way. Obviously, it's only probably in terms of destructive powers surpassed by the Guruguru no Mi with its earthquake, powers. Again, you could just level it. And you could create storm clouds for you to fly on, use mist, hail. You could create massive chunks of hail. A lot of people don't know this, but hail, we take it, it seems it's ineffective. No. Hail can actually be pretty bad. And this is a historical example. In the 1300s, you had this was during the early phases of the 100 Years' War. There was this hailstorm that got so bad, it killed about 600 of English soldiers that had died in France as a result of this hailstorm. Like, a lot of people think hail's not that dangerous. No. Trust me, hail is very dangerous. All right, it can mess you up. All right, so this is something that a lot of people will miss. They'll be like, oh, it's just hail. No. You can summon chunks of hail. You could do major damage. All right, you could just pop fools left and right. You can hurt them. All right, so you've got the wind power, the ability to create tornadoes and help summon typhoons out at sea. You can create lightning strikes that just level things. You can create hurricanes that basically maul and rip apart entire structures. Hail, mist. What other types of powers that would come with the ability to control the storms? I'm trying to imagine that. So then those main ones. If it's some kind of weather manipulation fruit, you probably could, for example, create or increase or decrease temperature, but that probably would be too far. That'd be like more weather-based power, so just purely storm-focused. It would be just like the more aggressive elements of the weather. Or you could create a snowstorm. Yeah, that's one. You could create a snowstorm. You could just create a massive snowstorm that basically mows down your enemies. All right, if it's all storm-based power phenomenon, then that counts. You create a little blizzard. All right, so that would give you like other fruit powers as well, like say Monet's snow fruit or Arkidi's ice fruit. But actually no, the ice fruit is colder than the snow fruit, so there's that effect for you. Okay, and you've got this power at your disposal. You're basically a one-man army. Now, me personally, I'm hoping it's a storm fruit because I wouldn't mind if it's a Logia, but I would really want this fruit to be out there, and he would just be like, okay, yeah, this is the second strongest of the Paramecia class, surpassed only by the Gura-Guranomi and its earthquake powers. Right? There's nothing that comes close to this in this series. So that's my first headcanon. I'm like, okay, so the storm fruit exists, and it basically would be in the hands of Dragon, who would use its power basically as like a cover to help Marines come in on a storm and then just wipe away everything, all right? Now, let's talk about the third and final theory of what Dragon's Devil Fruit. Okay, right? And this is probably the one that's may or may not be happening because of spoilers for the latest chapter, and we're not sure. But this gets into, for example, a mythical Zoan, like a sea god. All right, and there a rain god or a weather god. Okay, there are a lot, and I mean a lot of ones we could pick from. All right. Thor is the god of thunder. You obviously have, for example, in Japanese mythology, you've got Susanoo, who is basically essentially who was the storm god, who essentially was cast out after endless pranking and eventually wandered the earth, i.e. Japan, and killed an 8-headed serpent. Got a man's daughter to marry him. Got a sword from the snake he killed as an apology gift to his sister, Amaterasu. She got lost and stuck in a cave and was trapped, and they had to do this whole song and dance to get her out. Literally, they had to do a whole song and dance to get her out. If you wonder where Demon Slayer got the reference from, there the Kagura dance, yeah, that's where that comes from. So again, you've seen, you'll probably see that, okay? The problem with me is we've seen so many mythical Zoans in this arc, like, particularly from Wano. Like, we all remember the line Kizaru was like, mythical Zoans, they're very powerful, but even more rarer than Logias. And since Wano, we basically had like 3 mythical Zoans like every arc. Like, if you ignore Wano, which we had like 6, if I remember right. Let's see, you had Orochi, you had Kaidos, Orochis, then you had the Fox, Ginamaru, then you had Yamato's, then you had Luffy's, Katarina Devon from Blackbeard's crew. So that's 6. We had 6 mythical Zoans revealed in Wano. Okay, 6. Now, granted, Wano was the land of that everybody been hyped up for a while. It was the home of the Beast Pirates, and so it would make sense we were going to find more mythical Zoans there than anywhere else in the world. I mean, that makes sense. They were all in Wano the whole time, right? That makes sense. They were there, right? They were all in Wano. Makes total sense. That's why Wano's so special, like Sengoku said. But this whole notion that we've gotten so many more, like for example, Naked. Okay, if you're like me and you think the Gorosei's powers are, at least in part, they got for Imu, because the immortality, the covenants, and everything like that, if you think them becoming yokai is based apart by Imu's devil's fruit, and they're not typical devil fruits, then okay, fine, we don't have any Naked. But so far in Elbaf, we've had Killingham, we've had Loki's, and Ragnar's. We've had 3, okay? I am not making this up. We've had 3 mythical Zoans in this arc alone, and I know why we're getting more in this story. It makes sense, all right? Mythical Zoans are extremely powerful devil fruits, and not only do you have the added benefit of turning into a mythical creature that gives you extra strength, speed, and power, you also have an extra special ability, which I just remembered. I completely forgot. Blackbeard's crewmate, Doc Q, and his horse Stronger ate a mythical zone. Yes, Stronger has the Pegasus fruit. All right. If you're like me and you thought, oh no, wait, they went to Skypiea and they killed Pierre the bird, who could turn into a Pegasus. Like, Pierre was a bird that ate a horse fruit, and his hybrid form was just a regular Pegasus. But in the case of Stronger, he's a horse that ate a Pegasus, and so I don't know what his full Zoan transformation is any different from his hybrid. But tangent aside, let's get back to mythical zones. Okay, so what would be the name, or at least what would be some inspirations? Okay, so I've pretty much narrowed it down to Mesoamerican rain gods, all right, or storm gods. Okay, because here's the thing about Dragon. A lot of people don't know this. He is effectively kind of like inspired. He was created like in part by the favorite things about, say, for example, Latin American revolutionaries like Che Guevara, Fidel Castro. So, for example, Fidel Castro and a bunch of Cuban revolutionaries that overthrew Dave Batista rode on a ship called Grandma. Okay? A yacht called Grandma. All right? And you have Dragon Ship is also called, I believe it's called the Super Grandma or Sleeping Grandma. I forget. It's called Grandma something. And so that's obviously a reference to Fidel Castro ship. Okay, there's there. And then Dragon's favorite food, I believe it's the exact same food of Che Guevara. I'll put a picture right here. But it's called Biscato, something like that. It starts with a B. Again, sorry. So that leads me to believe that, okay, Oda's clearly going off for the Mesoamerican, Latin American mythology when it comes to Dragon. All right, it makes sense. He's a revolutionary. All right, he's trying to liberate the people of the world from the oppressive regime of the world government. All right, so let's say if it's a rain or a storm god, okay, and so here's something we understand. This gets back to old biblical times. All right, fire destroys, water cleanses and purifies. You all know about the story about the prophet Noah, how he essentially got an ark by orders of God, took a bunch of animals on there, and the world was flooded, and there you go from there, all right? So when it came to that, it's like, okay, so someone with the power of a rain or storm god, their job is to cleanse, to heal the world, because obviously Imu is the literal devil, and you have the Gorosei and the Such Dragons ruling at the top, and you've got their powers effectively just ruling over everybody. And so that leaves me to believe that it's like, okay, so then you've got the powers of these sorts of mythical creatures that you need to cleanse the world. Okay, got that. So I've come down to like two possibilities. What would it be? One is based off Mayan. Another one is based off Aztec mythology. Okay, so let's start off with the Mayan one. I got it right here on my phone. Apologies for that. Pull it up right here. All right, you have Cha'ak. Okay, you have Cha'ak. All right, they're both. It is a rain, storm, fertility god. Because a lot of people didn't understand. For Mayan and Aztec culture, you have a lot of people essentially just coming down to the conclusion that you need to have a lot of rain because in those areas rainfall is very vital to the environment, all right? And so for Cha'ak, all right, he is seen as a sort of, if I'm not mistaken, serpentine creature that has the ability to basically summon lightning strikes. He is much more seen as a cosmic entity and a mythical figure that brings down lightning strikes, provides sustenance to the farms and people's livelihoods. And his ability essentially comes down to, okay, so he's going to provide rain, nutrients. He's still a storm god, but otherwise in that, it seems pretty limited. Now, in Aztec culture, another similar occurrence occurs, but it's much more destructive, much more chaotic, at least compared to the Mayan one. And this is where they both have sacrifices, but the Aztec one also involves children sacrifices to this rain god or storm god to essentially bring rainfall, harvest. And so, yeah, that's the thing that happens in those cultures where they see them as, okay, one in the Cha'ak case is a much more benevolent, more cosmic entity, and Tulak, I believe Tulak is the name of the Aztec war rain god. He essentially is a much more probably butchering the hell out of this word, ignatic, or just like malevolent force compared to Cha'ak in Mayan culture. Again, if I'm wrong, please correct me on this one. All right, I just did a little research on this, and so not sure how this would all relate. But for me, if Dragon did have a mythical zone, all right, this would probably be the first one, Cha'ak, since he's serpentile. I would probably say it is with some serpentine features, it's probably say a snake fruit model, or you could just be a human fruit model, this fruit, or in the case of chalk, it would be a human fruit model, this. So again, we've seen a lot of mythical zones in this arc, and we don't have a lot of mythical human versions. Actually, no, we had, if you count Luffy, we have 3 mythical human fruits, right? So far, Chopper's the only one with the standard one. Ironic, we haven't seen an ancient human fruit, like a Neanderthal or whatever, but that's a thing that happens with those devil fruits, all right? So we've so far have seen all 3 of those. Haven't seen any of those powers come to existence yet. We haven't seen a mythical zone of that Rain God yet, but this is probably one that Oda might do, because again, mythical zones, it's like the easiest way for you to, okay, here is the power that I need for this arc and this situation, so I'm going to give someone the zone transformation and the ability to do this, right? With killing him, he's a Kirin, but he's also able to control dreams, so he's a dream human. You see this with Loki. He's a dragon, but he's also a thunder dragon that can shoot out thunder blasts, all right? So you have like all these extra abilities. Me personally, I want it to be the storm fruit. And again, Dragon is on Fraud Watch, all right? He is officially on Fraud Watch, okay? We know Dragon is on Fraud Watch. We know he's there. We're still waiting for him to do something, okay? Again, I don't care. At this point, I'll take any fruit, all right? I'll take any fruit, okay? Any fruit power. But the fact that he's still on Fraud Watch for all these years, and people are giving him shit, like people are calling him a fraud, and I get it, it's being memed on death, and they are hilarious, okay? They're ethical memes, all right? Kuma's a meme of, when I die, I want Dragon to bury me, so that way he can let me down one last time. And again, these are ethical memes, they're funny, they're hilarious, I'm not even going to debate it. But the notion that, Dragon is a fraud, yeah, he hasn't done anything in the story. So, but look east, all right? So again, waiting to see what happens. Hopefully this one of the 3 recommendations, Wind Logia, Storm Fruit, Mythical Zone, Rain God, or Storm God. I don't want it to be a human fruit Susanoo, because that just seems a little weird. It wouldn't really fit the whole Latin American revolutionary that Oda's going for with Dragon. And so you got to reference, Mesoamerican mythology. But yeah, I'm Malik. God bless you all, signing out. All right, please like, comment, and subscribe on this video. It really means a lot to me. On my small channel, help me out against the algorithm. I really appreciate it. God bless you all and have a wonderful day.